Good tidings, all you lovely individuals. It is League Unlock, another episode. We are slightly, but only slightly late to the party because it is time for power rankings galore to begin, starting with the split, the season, the league that's kicking off first, the LPL, the best region on the planet over in China. And, well, they've already started. Things kicked off today on the Friday. So we're a bit behind to be making your preseason power rankings when there's already been games on the Rift. But, you know, that's just things you got to do. And they might be slightly influenced by the matches that did happen today. But we're going 17-1 in the LPL. 4 of these teams will be going to the World Championship. Let's get forward and get things started. And there are some changes. There was a lot of off-season moves within China, which the biggest question you might say, how is Victory 5, the team that went 0-16, only won a single match in all of the spring split? How are they not dead last? Well, they did make a whole bunch of roster changes, but more importantly, Dominus or Demo, well, they lost GA, Mark, and Gala, who, I mean, that's all the best players on that squad. They already weren't particularly good, very underwhelming to what we were expecting. You lose all those key members. They drop down to 17. Maybe, well, not maybe. You can't be worse if you're Victory 5, so there's got to be some kind of improvement for them. Suning and LNG are the next squads on the board, and they are the teams that actually matched up earlier today. And it was Suning coming away with a 2-0 victory in that one. LNG, they should be better. They seem to have more talent. With somebody like Flandre, they should be a better team on the Rift. We didn't see it at all in spring, and I'm not convinced we're going to see much growth out of them in the summer split. I mean, they were the only team that gave up a win to Victory 5. So 15th is honestly generous for them. They're going to be hovering around that bottom 3 pretty much the entire split, I would be guessing, at the very least. Suning, a few changes, but pretty much the same roster coming back, and they were one of many, as you'll see as this list goes on, many squads that were oh so close to a playoff spot at 7 and 9. There was an insane, I think, 4 or 5 way tie for that, just missing out on that coveted 8th spot and the final spot in playoffs. Suning, one of those many squads that did just miss out, and there are many other teams right beside them that also missed out. Starting with Rogue Warriors in at 13. Jewuji, sure, the hype's died a little bit with him. People are still, I think Rogue Warriors overperformed what people were expecting out of them last year, myself included. They were, I mean, you look at from 13th to 9th, all of them were 7 and 9. So one game, and some of these squads could potentially be making playoffs. So Rogue Warriors, OMG, and Vici feel like they're all relatively close. OMG obviously had that great stretch where they were winning. They had like a 3 or 4 game win streak where they were very much in the playoff race. They still were at the end, but they were inside of that top 8. Eventually fell out at the end of the regular season. Vici, Coma, another split under his belt with the squad. Will they improve a whole bunch? The big change for Vici is obviously Lian coming over from IG. People were kind of questioning why IG decided to get rid of him and are solely going with Ning for the summer split. I don't have the answer for that. I don't know why they ended up choosing to do that, but Lian should be. Chieftain's not there anymore, so AIX or Ix was the jungler for them the majority of spring, and I think Lian could be an upgrade. It's too early in this guy's career for us to just say, yeah, he's no good, just because he had some bad games or some games where he wasn't fully involved as much as would have liked on that IG roster. He's still very young. There's still time to develop, and working with somebody like Coma, maybe Vici has an even better summer and we actually see them make that push for playoffs. Out of a lot of these 7 and 9 squads, they're at least, you have more confidence in them than somebody like Suning, Rogue Warriors, or OMG, which is why they are in at number 11 as we move in to the coveted top 10 for preseason rankings in the LPL. And Billy is the final 7 and 9 squad. Talk about talent. Meteor and Fofo. We said LNG they should be better with the talent that they have. Billy should be knocking on that playoff door with guys like Fofo, MVP of the LMS. And I think he had a relatively decent split in his debut in the LPL. Sure, he's not Kuro, but I think he has the potential to be a better carry for this Billy squad than Kuro even was. And Meteor is a fantastic jungler. So Billy should be hovering near that playoff area. The most interesting and compelling offseason by far. And Mark and I kind of talked about it about a week ago now. LGD, huge, sweeping changes. Basically, the entire top half of that map they were changing. Kramer and Peanut were clearly the two best performing players for LGD throughout all of last split. And at times, they were the only well-performing players on that squad. Now they get some help in GA. They get some help with Mark coming over and also getting Long Jing. GA, you imagine, is the only one who immediately comes in to a starting role, but that is a massive upgrade. Yuki did not perform well in a lot of these matches, and Lies, whoever they were throwing in the top lane, even if Long Jing had some very suspect for performances on RNG, you've still got to assume that he's going to be an upgrade. And with that core, a core of Peanut, GA, and Kramer, that should be a playoff team. We have them in at 9th heading into the summer split. Would not be shocked if you see them kind of vying for a playoff spot. I don't see them getting higher than maybe 7th just because of how insane the LPL is. But do not be shocked at all if LGD is a playoff team. There's a decent amount of hype because of all these big names that they got. And we have seen LGD disappoint in years past. A lot of people comparing them the KT of the LPL. Well, KT's actually won some stuff. I know LGD circa 2015 is when they were maximum hype and absolutely just belly flopped, face flopped in every sense of the word when they went to Worlds in 2015. This team isn't going to Worlds even with all these changes, but they should be very much in the thick of that playoff race, which is something they were very distant from last year or last split in spring. So expect big improvements out of LGD coming into this split. E-Star, Mark and I talked so much about them, about how great they were, and the debut that they had was obviously incredible. The rookies were taking down all the big names in the LPL. It fell off a cliff as they finished 2-4 in the regular season, got upset by the team one spot ahead of them in World Elite when playoffs rolled around. They lose Cryan in the offseason, which is a huge loss for them. One of maybe the best performing player for them. So yeah, they're going to take a few slides from that 5th place finish that they did have after the regular season last split. I still believe this can be a playoff team with Wei, Wink, Xiaoxi. Fen it's a really substantial downgrade, so I could very much see them being on the outside looking in when it comes to playoffs. I'm a little upset that Cryan left. I would have loved to have seen him stay on this squad and be able to develop with the other rookies around him instead of heading off to RNG. But E-Star, I still believe they can be a playoff team. And they might even have Zhao Bai might not even be the main starter in the top lane. They might have some subs coming in, some potential more rookies coming into the forefront for them. But even with Wink, Wei, and Xiaoxi, this could be a playoff team in the LPL. World Elite, big surprise how well they finished and wrapped up the season last year. We just talked about how they beat E-Star. They already got a win in 2020 summer with you could call it a minor upset over EDG. I mean, obviously, we haven't talked about EDG yet, so they are higher on the list than World Elite. But the reason we don't have them even higher than 7th, based on how they did last year, is the champion pool for Teacher Ma is still a big issue for me, and he looks great. He looked great in week 1 on the Gallia. We know his Aurelian Soul is an absolute menace, but it's just kind of these niche picks. I haven't really seen him be able to play whatever was meta in spring. We'll see if he's picked up more champions in his arsenal when it rolls around in summer. But I feel like eventually he will be a liability against some of these other world-class mid laners in the LPL, not being able to play a similar play style. There's one thing that DoinB does. Sure, he can play all this crazy off-meta stuff, but he can also play the meta picks and your Azirs and your Syndras. Haven't really seen that out of Teacher Ma in his very young career still. He's a young player with plenty of time to develop. And overall, the transition from the GA Mystic era into whatever era we end up calling this version of World Elite has happened splits years faster than most people, myself included, were expecting. So the regrowth, redevelopment, and rebranding almost of World Elite has happened a whole lot quicker than most people were expecting. A spot ahead of them is RNG, and I know everyone's going to freak out. RNG, how can they be number 6? There's no Uzi. The greatest AD carry, the greatest LPL player of all time, has retired. He's not going to be on RNG. It is Betty who's got starting duties, but in the same reason that E-Star took a step back by losing Crying, RNG, they still made playoffs without Uzi last split. I really hope that Cryan is getting the majority of starts over Xiaohu, because Xiaohu and Longjing were the biggest issues for this squad throughout all of the spring split, and now theoretically Cryan comes in to start. Longjing's no longer there with 705 coming over from JDG. I know that JD Gaming went on their huge win streak as soon as 705 was not starting, but that's just because of how good Zoom is on that roster. So 705 actually filled in admirably for that JDG squad when Zoom was unable to play. I think he's going to be an upgrade over Longjing, which means 2 solo lane upgrades for RNG. And your Betty's not even a downgrade from Uzi, because Uzi wasn't playing last split. So it's the same bot lane, and Betty held his own very well. The biggest question mark actually for me is going to still be Xiaolong Bai, XLB in the jungle. If he can continue to improve and develop, him alongside his buddy Cryan has the potential to be one of the better mid lane jungle duos in all of the LPL, and that is why RNG is coming in at number 6, which is higher than what they finished in spring, because I think the solo lanes will make that big of a difference for them in hopefully making it to playoffs. Worlds, that's a stretch. Don't see RNG making it to Worlds, because the further we go on this list, the more stacked all of these teams are getting. So no Uzi on the roster. Can't see RNG making Worlds, but absolutely looking like a playoff team. Now we have hit the top 5, and it's a team we alluded to. They lost their opening match against World Elite, but Edward Gaming cracked the top 5, and we'll explain why. They finished 9-7. They had a good showing in playoffs. They won a round against RNG. They took a game off of FPX in the next round, and the majority of the spring split, EDG was the team that suffered the most from all of the lockdown and quarantining that was going on in China, because so much of their roster, their starting roster, the top side, and the coaching staff was not fully implemented into the team until very late in the split. Well, now you have all of summer to develop that synergy. Clear Love's going to be there. Scout and Mako are still all pro levels within their positions, and Hope is as well. Hope had an incredible split last year. Expect similar results out of him this year. I don't know why you wouldn't expect it out of Summer, and Scout continues to be, it's year in and year out. We're talking 4+ years now where you're talking about him as an elite level mid laner within China, and even when you do see him on the international stage, he can go toe to toe with the very best from other regions. Edward Gaming is right up there with RNG as one of the most storied franchises, probably the most storied franchise in the LPL. No matter what the roster is, they continue to just churn out playoff berths, and because of the added time that they're going to have working with this roster, fully think that they can be a top 5 team, but that's their ceiling. We have them at their absolute ceiling, because the top 4 is another tier in the LPL. You know, we love to talk about tiers instead of just going number by number, and the tiers really get separated when you get to the top 4, because they all seem to be in a category of their own. And to break up the tiers even further, I think you're putting IG in a tier of their own, as in, after what we saw from the Midseason Cup, you can't really talk about them in the same conversation as the top three with how the regular season or with how playoffs ended for IG with the third place loss and the semifinals loss. And then you go to the midseason cup and it was not a good time if you were an IG fan. So I don't think you can even put them in the conversation as the other top three, but they're still a tier above a squad like Edward Gaming, like RNG. They're still, these are the four. I would be shocked if these four teams were not the representatives heading over to Worlds to represent the LPL. I just can't see any squad usurping or taking over one of their spots. But IG, I mean, now it's just going to be Ning for summer. The Shy is in one of the biggest slumps we've seen of his career. Puff and Southwind are fine, but it's a lot of work for Rookie right now on this IG squad, and I don't know if he can do enough to catapult them into that top three category. So still a ton of question marks heading out of this IG roster, which is crazy considering they were 14-2 in the regular season. But is Ning coin flip Ning? It's a weighted coin the opposite direction. It's seemed to be really after MSI last year when they were there. He's been not the world champion MVP level jungler since, well, when he was the MVP of the World Finals. And the top three, the hardest one to choose between was FPX and JDG. Who do you put second? Who do you put third? I think they're very close and evenly matched. FPX, obviously, they got the better of them. When the midseason cup did roll around, they won that matchup, and JDG obviously won the LPL Spring Split. So they both have arguments either way. MVP in Kanavi. The big thing for FPX and the big thing that we discovered at the midseason cup is we saw them implementing Khan a lot better. He seemed to fit and synergize a lot better with this roster, which should be scary for any of the other teams in the LPL, because we talked about it when the signing happened in the offseason. Once Khan can fit into this lineup seamlessly, they're only going to be better than they were in 2019. And what did they do in 2019? Oh yeah, they won the World Championship and they won an LPL split. So terrifying for the opposition, but JDG, we know the win streak they had. They hadn't lost the series with Zoom until they did lose to FPX at the midseason cup, but they still haven't, within the constraints of the LPL, dropped the series since Zoom returned to the lineup. Zoom and Kanavi are the best mid or jungle top lane duo in the LPL and one of the best in the world. So JDG, because of, you've got to recognize the playoff run, the end of the regular season, what they did there trumps losing a series to FPX at the midseason cup, which is why JD Gaming come in that number 2 spot, absolutely deserving of them, and recognize the defending champs from the spring split. But the defending champs cannot be number 1 on this list. It is actually the team that they beat in the finals, of course. Most people, I think, would have top as that number 1 spot heading into summer, excuse me. The domination that they showed at the midseason cup was just a sight to see against these other world-class world's contenders. They were absolutely slaughtering them. They did it to FPX. They did it to Gen G. And whew, Jackie Love on this roster. It looks like an absolutely new roster. Karsa is firing on all cylinders again, which was what the biggest issue with this team was in the regular season. It wasn't even a Photic before Jackie Love came. It was Karsa underperforming. Jackie Love comes in. All of a sudden, Karsa starts performing again. We finally got to just recognize that 369 is one of the most consistent top laners in the LPL. Sure, the Shy is better at his peak, but I think you're talking about 369 right behind Zoom in terms of consistencies and well above average play out of a top laner. Knight has gotten help in the solo lanes. He's getting help in the bottom lane. Across the board, he's getting assistance. And, oh, by the way, Knight is probably the best player on the planet right now. So, yes, TES coming in at number 1 ahead of the summer split. And if somehow there's some crazy universe where we don't get to see Knight at Worlds, I will be absolutely devastated. Hard-pressed to see it. They've already got that second-place finish, so they have a ton of championship points. Another deep playoff run. All but guarantees that we'll be seeing them there. After coming oh so close, 1 game away against IG last year to get to Worlds, you bet your bottom dollar we're going to be seeing Top at Worlds this year, Knight on the international stage. I'm super excited. TES, sure, they won the Midseason Cup, but you know they are hungry for an LPL title and to represent the best region in the world at Worlds this year. TES come in at number 1, and the LPL is about a week ahead of all the other regions. Action in China is underway. Make sure you are checking it out because the LPL is right up there. Probably the most exciting region to watch right now. And oh yeah, it has been for about 2 years.